last weekend, it's just awesome to see and be a part of the youth seminars and all the students that are there. We had like 320 people attend this year, and so that's just amazing in and of itself. But to have our teens involved and just I just want to give them the opportunity to say what they learned through snow camp and then through the youth seminars. Some of them weren't at snow camp, and youth seminars is fresh on their mind. But they had Dwight Peterson for both times, and really not necessarily something that I learned, but something that I was reminded of is when Dwight was speaking is he talked about how much different people have impacted his children growing up, and yet I'm a product, it sounds like I'm not a person, but I am a product of people like Dwight pouring into my life, or Pastor Jeff. And so no matter where you are as an adult, you can have a major impact on a student's life, on the children that grow up in the church and that come to youth group. You can have a major impact on them by investing in them. And then students, you also, 1 Timothy says that you're to be an example to the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, and in purity. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to be an example to everyone in the church and to encourage the church as a whole. So students, if you were at youth seminars or snow camp, I've already talked to you. Don't be afraid. I don't care if it's a 30-second testimony. I don't care if it's 10 seconds or, if you're going like 10 minutes, I'll probably cut you off. But I just want to have the students share something they learned or a few things they learned the last couple of times we've done something. All right, so who will be the first? If you don't raise your hand or somebody doesn't, I'll just pick somebody. So who wants to be the first one? All right.
So I was just going to list some things that I learned from the Friday night session of snow camp. And I really liked listening to Dwight Peterson because he's a really good speaker, and I learned a lot from him. And so it was cool to listen to him at the youth seminars as well. So he was talking about passion, and he defined passion as the feeling that one has towards what's most important in life. And he was saying how most teens, how most people think teens don't have a passion about things, but they do, whether it's sports or school or whatever. And so he was saying that the person that's comfortable in his own righteousness hasn't really understood the magnitude of God's grace. And so that was just kind of cool to me because, you don't really realize how much God has done for you. And his last thing that he said was, how can you not realize that you deserved one thing and received another? And so just kind of realizing how much God did for us and what we really deserved. So that was cool.
All right, I really liked the second session that Dwight did for snow camp. It was about having passion for your faith, and that God wrote the gospel not only to save us, but to change us. And it just really talked about how, since we're Christians, we really have something to live for, and how it got me thinking about how, unsaved people, they really just live for their own desires. And it just really got me wanting to, help save other people and give them something to live for.
Basically, what I took away from it is that is to keep God as number one in your life, and that the Bible can answer all the questions that you have.
Well, I learned that the Bible is an owner's manual and that it has all the answers in it.
Honestly, I was going to say the same thing as him. So, well, we're twins, so, yeah.
All right, who's next?
Okay, so at youth seminars, I bet you guys know that we had Rise come in and Dwight Peterson, and my family is very musical and stuff like that. So obviously I like the music, but I encourage you guys to come out and just see all these 300 some teens just waving their arms in the air and just having a great time. It's really awesome.
give you time to think. Snow camp. Yes, Carl.
Well, I really like the second workshop that I went to, which was why was there so many religions? And one of the things that they talked about was how, like, archaeological evidence proves that, like, the Bible is correct, like, versus Islam and Hinduism and Buddhism and other religions like that. And historians agree, and the example was, like, Noah's Ark that they talked about. Historians agree on it, and the evidence points to the correct viewpoint as the Christian viewpoint other than the other religions. And I never really thought about that before, so I just thought that was pretty cool when he pointed that out.
At snow camp, I learned Dwight used the example of when he was saved when he was 6 years old, and he said that time when he got saved, all he wanted to do was to not go to hell. But he said that decision when he was 6 years old has helped him to fight anger in his life, to help him to be a good father, all these kind of stuff. He said when he was 6 years old, he thought that he was getting out of hell, but that one decision helped him throughout his whole life, and that's what I learned at snow camp.
I had the opportunity to hear Dwight Peterson speak at snow camp and youth seminars, and I really enjoyed hearing his challenging messages. And one of the points that I learned at snow camp was God gives us not only the power to save us, but to change us. And this is a reminder to me that God gives me everything I need to change and to become more like Christ. Like, we don't need anything, and it's not us, but he gives us the power, and we can be like Christ.
At youth seminars, Dwight Peterson shared 4 indisputable truths. One of those truths was God arranges the events of my life. I need to remember that every situation that comes into my life is from God, and they are all to make me better.
What I learned from youth seminars was that the Bible has something to say about everything. So if you have a question like about anything, you can find it somewhere in the Bible. And if you don't find it in there, then you're just not looking hard enough.
What I learned at youth seminars is that John the Baptist asked Jesus a question, which was if he was the Messiah, and I learned that it's okay to ask God questions.
I learned in youth seminars that the Bible never counteracts itself, and other religions like Islam and Hinduism and Buddhism and the Mormons, that all their books that they wrote somewhere in it, the book counteracts itself. Like in I think it was Hinduism, that they have many gods, and they don't believe in a god or something like that, and you can't have no God and have a God at the same time. So, yeah, that's what I learned.
I overall learned that I have to give myself more up to God for his use over mine. And I also enjoyed the seminar that talked about how to prove the Bible and like the Dead Sea Scrolls and stuff like that.
We have 2 people, I think. Where'd Mallory go? Ah, sneaky.
What I learned at snow camp was that Dwight Peterson taught in the 4th session he did about being spiritually submissive and spiritually defiant. And he gave 2 examples that David was spiritually defiant and Joseph was spiritually submissive. And David's pattern of failure was he became spiritually lazy, spiritually confident, and alone and defiant with his spiritual walk with God. And Joseph made sure he was disciplined, humble, connected, and submissive. So I just learned that I need to stay submissive to God and not to get too cocky in how close I am to him, and make sure I'm staying close to him and not just going along with it. So that's what I learned.
Did I miss anybody after Mallory? Who hasn't gone?
Okay, so I wanted to share something from the second workshop that I went to, and it was called Who is Jesus? And it was just about trying to find and understand who Jesus is and was. And it's that kind of something that like we as Christians just like are constantly like searching to find. And we learned about that he like is in us, and he's always showing himself to us. And then he talked about when people see us, they should be able to see Jesus in us. So that got me to thinking, like, who am I and why am I who I am? And I've just been thinking about this a lot lately. Just a lot of you know I went on a missions trip to Jamaica, and I just have felt so blessed lately and like fortunate that I have a life in Christ, and a lot of the people there didn't. And there's just like God has a reason for why we are who we are, and that's just kind of something that I've been learning and growing through. So.
I got to go to snow camp and the youth seminars, and I learned a lot from Dwight. Like, all of his sessions were super awesome. At snow camp, one of the big things that I learned was how God gives us all of the tools that we need to grow and have victory over temptation. And so all we have to do is use those tools that he's given us, and we can succeed. And then at youth seminars, one of the things that really stood out to me was just God's incredible love for us. One of the things that he said was, God knows the number of hairs on your head. Of course he wants to know like every intimate detail of your life. And so that just kind of like is just like crazy to me, and it kind of let me see a little bit deeper into God's love, so it was really cool.
I wasn't there for the whole time, but I was able to see all of the kids that were able to go there, and it was really cool to see all the youth and teens be able to gather and worship God, and all of the music was really cool, and the food, so that was good.
Did anyone go that didn't speak yet? You were hiding a little bit, but I saw you.
Well, I learned that God created me to be unique, and that everyone's unique so that they can play their own part in the church, and I thought that was really cool.
Isn't it exciting to see our students learning and growing and being a part? Like, they don't just go to events, but they learn and they grow, and God shapes them through the events. So that just excites me. Hazel would like to say something.
I did not go to snow camp, and I wasn't here for the seminars either. But you listen to these kids, and I've always known for years and years and years this church has the best group of kids any church can have. And boy, this just really thrills my soul like you can't believe, kids. And it gives me a chance to house a few kids in my house and talk with them and learn what they were all excited to. So I just want to thank you kids for having the nerve to get up and tell us. I know that wasn't easy for some of you, extremely difficult for some of you, but it's been a real blessing. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Hazel.